Before I start with the 5 leadership habits and practices that I prepared for you, I'd like to debunk a common myth about great leaders, that they are stoic, unwavering, and they never fail. Because that's a very old way of thinking, very passé. Resilient leadership isn't about being unshakable, but steadying yourself, your team, and your family with the shake. Because life shakes all of us. I know this to be true more than one time over. And I know I'm not alone. For a little bit of context, I'm going to talk about the last 3 years. The last 3 years, I wrote a book called Look Up: Global Stories of Resilience, during which I interviewed 30 individuals who had overcame tremendous adversity, everything from severe illness to grief, immigration, and war. Regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, there was a common through line, and there was 2 things: that they leaned into the power of perspective, and they found strength in their community. These habits that I've curated for you, I took from 3 sources: the research I did in writing that book, my own resilience journey, and then time in corporate America, as well as leading international tours for adults over 10 years. So let me at least take you back until the point where life shook me to a standstill. I was in my early 30s. I seemingly had it all: career, marriage, home, supportive group of friends and family. Then, on a normal fall day, I took out the trash. On my way to the dumpster, a 1,000-pound tree limb from 30 feet in the air struck me, leaving me unconscious. There's the tree limb, and that's where I woke up 5 days later with a broken neck and no recollection of what had transpired. I went underneath neurosurgery, a lengthy recovery, which was in an immobilization brace. I nicknamed it my cage because it was part protector and part prison. Now, over that lengthy recovery, I also discovered things about life that weren't necessarily what was playing in my reality. I found out that my husband was unfaithful. Also, that high-power career forced me to resign. So, in one fell swoop, I lost everything I held dear. That was restart number 1. So, press fast forward a couple years, I had rebuilt, architected a new life. I had penned 3 books, I had become a TEDx speaker, and I had found love again. I found love again by going on a helicopter flight lesson with a friend. And the helicopter flight lesson instructor was none other than Brian Treptow, my life partner. We moved to Hawaii, and everything was perfect. Actually, this is the first time that I've spoken about Brian Treptow. In December 2022, in trying to save someone else's life, Brian crashed into the Pacific and passed away, dropping me to my knees. Restart number 2. Press fast forward to today. I moved from Hawaii to Nashville, and Nashville has proven to be a win-win. The creative mecca that I needed to jumpstart that book again after Brian's passing and finish it with more gusto than I started it with, as well as continue to heal. For those that are living with grief, you know what I mean. So these 5 habits I'm sharing with you today are not theories. They are life tested. And they are for you, leading yourself through challenging, uncertain times, your families, your congregations, your leadership in business. The first one that I'm going to hone in on is what was the common theme in everybody's story in the Lookup book, that they leaned into the power of perspective, and I certainly leaned in that as well. In the most challenging times, this is the only thing that we can control. And I distilled this into a mantra called Look Up. And this mindfulness practice, as well as life tool, is something that you can take with you anywhere, that you can grasp 2 elements that you have control over. And that's being in the moment, actually appreciating the beauty around you as well as hazards, and then finding the upside in whatever situation that you are in, because every hurdle, hiccup, or wound eventually turns into wisdom. Now, looking up for resilient leaders is about taking a pause and stepping back so that you can tap into that perspective, so that you can look at a burned out individual or a business crisis with a little bit more clarity. Resilient leaders don't necessarily react in the moment unless they're working in an ER or they are serving for our military. They typically pause, zoom out, and get a better vantage point as to what's going on and maybe something that needs attention. But if you don't tap into the power of perspective or use lookup, it doesn't work. So for every one of these habits, I'm going to challenge you to do something today, hopefully later this afternoon, and it is to set up in that your lifeline, that cell phone of yours, a calendar reminder to take 12 minutes to look up. Step away from your screens, plural. Get out of that environment that you're working or working from home or family that you're trying to manage. Get out of that environment and be in the moment. In time, then ask yourself what's going right, what needs adjusting, and be grateful for where you are. Now you may be thinking, why 12 minutes? Did she just pick out of a hat 12 minutes? I'm a lifelong learner, and there is scientific evidence that says that 12 minutes 4 times a week is the benchmark for mental health. But the more that you practice mindfulness, the better you'll get at it. So I'm challenging you to do it every day, not just 4, all 7. Now, this is only half of the time that we are supposed to be exercising our bodies. It's been scientifically proven that 150 to 300 minutes is what we need to do to exercise. By the way, if you want to know more from soup to nuts about the scientific evidence behind this 12 minutes, there's a great book called Peak Mind, and it is written by Amishi Jha. Amishi Jha. So speaking about exercise, let's move on to the second habit of resilient leaders, and that's that they exercise their restart reflex, and they welcome Plan B. So just like in the gym, you need to increase reps to advance from your plateau. Your resilience muscle is the same. And the power of the human brain is a marvel. The neuroplasticity and the ability for the brain to learn new thought pathways, movement pathways, is a life tool and a leadership tool. I have a lot of experience in Plan Bs from leading over 100 tours to Cuba. For groups anywhere from 20 to 40 adults, we experienced a myriad of challenges. Hurricanes, sporadic road closures, and plumbing fiascos at our 4-star hotels. But as any good leader, I set expectations from the first moment I met them. I would say, we need to be flexible. Plan B is probably better than Plan A ever could have been. And as long as we don't get to Plan Z, we're okay. So in business, these Plan Bs look like project pivots, team reorgs, or campaign shifts. Think of them like in sailing terms, that when the wind changes, you adjust your sails. Well, you need to do that in your life, your home, as well as in business. The tip for you on this is something that I did after every tour to Cuba. What worked? What didn't work? Try doing this with your campaigns at work, after a family vacation, or even your next party. What would you do differently the next time around? The third habit that I like to call our currency is authenticity, because in this day and age, it is not only rare, but it's also powerful. And with AI and the digital noise, the only way that we're going to win collectively is becoming more authentic. And the only thing that screams authenticity better than a hug with a good friend, who I call family, is a picture of a child. They are so authentic, no filters. They make friends just out of proximity and being on the swing set. Then we as adults, we like multiple layers of filters. Societal filters, work filters, marriage filters. Where does it end? But it makes it harder for us to make friends. It also makes us harder to act as our authentic selves. So I asked a lot of you today how you felt. I got a lot of responses. I asked for one word response, and it kind of leveled the playing field. You told me how you were feeling about today, whether you were proud, that you were excited. I got a couple of those. Some said stressed and overwhelmed, but it kind of got me at the point that I understood the temperature of the room. And so this is one tip that you could do in your next team meeting. Instead of asking for a dissertation, just ask for one word, how you feel about the project or how you feel about the day. What I found that was so interesting, when I became vulnerable, sharing my when all balls drop moment with the tree, the divorce, and the career loss, people came out of the woodwork. Me being vulnerable gave them permission to be vulnerable, and that is something resilient leaders need to do, because that's when the real conversations start. So I encourage you to be your authentic selves, showcase a little bit more vulnerability, and it'll pay you back 2, 3, 4, 5-fold. The fourth habit of resilient leadership that I want to stress is Plan B on steroids, okay? As leaders or just individuals, we're going to encounter a time where everything just changes. And you want everything to go back to that former normal, but it's impossible to go back to that. And as leaders in this uncertain change that we're going into, with AI taking jobs, uncertainty in politics, the economy, this is essential to not always want to press rewind to the former normal, but welcome what's coming up next and the new normal. It is very difficult because we are programmed to not like change. But the only certainty we have is change. I think we, as a collective society or a world, we went through this with the pandemic, and probably not just one new normal, but two. But what was the thing that got us through the pandemic was Darwin's law, adaptability. Not necessarily strength of the nation, the vaccine, It was adaptability. And that is the case for people, societies, organizations, non-for-profits, congregations, soup to nuts. So just like I advised after every slight shift or detour that you have a meeting, this is for those we're going to head in a different direction. I personally just went through a merger and acquisition, and I can tell you that doing a bouncing forward session was about a couple-week meeting because we had a different team, we had different leaderships, and we had different products. So the fourth is about bouncing forward and evolving. The last is my absolute favorite because it typically floors some people that I would say that a leadership strategy is adventure, but it's my favorite life hack. Some people think that adventure means climbing Mount Everest or maybe jumping out of a perfectly good plane. It can be, but let's just define it as something that we can agree upon, an activity that is all-consuming. It puts you in the zone. It can be physical, emotional, or mental, or a combination of all three, but it puts you on that one-track mind. You're not thinking about what you're doing at the grocery store, what you're doing later this afternoon with your team meeting. You are fully present, and that presence is what gives you three benefits: enhanced clarity, increased energy, and the ability to tap into the power of perspective faster and better for when the you-know-what hits the fan. So one of my favorite adventures is what is pictured up here, the Kumano Kodo Trail in Japan, and it challenged me culturally, language, culinary, physically, emotionally, mentally, and I came back with the clarity to pivot in my life, not only personally, but also professionally. Now, I'm not saying you have to travel to Japan, but think about it in more simple terms so that you could actually accept this challenge. Take your team for a hike. Embrace a new AI tool. Publicly speak. Maybe even sing karaoke when you want to hide in the back. Do this and see how it changes your leadership. Because leaders that embrace the unknown, the leaders that adventure, lead better. I'm challenging you to do this sometime this month. Evaluate the way it makes you feel. You may actually think that you can conquer more than you thought previously. And then don't repeat that same adventure. Choose something else. I would kind of aspire for quarterly, but if you can up that, you're going to reap more benefits every month. So what I have done is I have created a kind of resilience toolkit here for you with those 5 things. Look up, embrace plan B, be authentic, welcome new normal, and adventure. It's not about avoiding the storm, but it's leading with flexibility and courage. But I wanted to add on that, don't forget to have fun and learn to dance in the rain. So for those of you, that's a hybrid of those 2 famous quotes, and you always have look up in your back pocket. So I implore you to today do that calendar invite and try it out. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, the contributors. Thank you, the Rotary.